Del Rio, Texas. Rob Wade and Robert Garza. Two guys who dive. This episode of Two Guys Who Dive, recorded Saturday, 1 September 2012, episode 31. That was no accidents. Well, welcome to another episode of Two Guys Who Dive, only right now it is one guy who dives. You'll notice that to my left is a vacant chair. See, easily moved because there's nobody in it. My co-host, Robert Garza, is running a few minutes late. He needs to fix a few broken processes, but we're getting started anyway. We were running a little bit late getting the podcast started this week. The software that we use here at the studio for podcasting is called XSplit. And it's for being a really inexpensive piece of software. It has a lot of great features to it. But unfortunately, it's still in the upgrade phase. It only earlier this year went into final version 1.0 release. And there were a number of things that needed to be fixed, and the programmers updated or released an update to it to bring it to 1.1 to fix a number of issues with the software, and it was released last night. And I logged in, or I got up this morning, logged into the computer to start doing the show prep, get things ready for this evening's podcast, and well, I did notice a number of the improvements that the programmers made to it were some of the things that I was looking forward to. Unfortunately, some of the things that were working pretty well in version 1.0 were broken in the process. So I've literally been scrambling most of the day today to try to troubleshoot the problem. Get the software working correctly with all the cameras here and the audio, and sent some emails to the programmers, and unfortunately, I guess they're off enjoying a nice weekend and haven't responded to me yet. So I really had no choice except but to load back to the previous version, well, which of course required a number of things. Anytime you upgrade software, you typically have to completely uninstall what you upgraded to in order to load back to an older version, unless there happens to be a facility in the software that lets you revert to a previous version. But usually it's a matter of removing the software and throwing yourself back to the old version, which of course required me to load all the new, or recreate some of the configurations and make sure it all worked. So working feverishly to get the podcast functioning. And finally, here comes my co-host, ScubaDog. So what happened, dude? You're going to have to fix your, just pull it down, I think.
Okay. A million apologies to everyone out there.
What happened?
Well, like everything else, 30-minute meeting turned into an hour and 45 minutes.
You know what? You tell people I cannot make the meeting if it cannot be started and ended by this time. That's how I do it.
Yeah.
I make people bend to my will, or I tell them I simply say, you know what? I can't be there. You know, I'm just my time is set, and I only have so much flexible time. And so if somebody throws me a curve and says, "Oh, you know, we got a surprise meeting," I'm like, unless I'm going to get fired over it, I'm sorry. You'll have to pick a better time. You throw a curve like that, I simply can't do it, you know. So, you know, those things happen. I know how it is, but
yeah, this was definitely unexpected. I really, you know, it was gonna be a quick interview type question deal.
Never believe somebody when they tell you,
you know,
it's going to be a quick
turn into a lengthy debate there.
Oh yeah, see that's the other challenge is when somebody wants to reel you in, and I was like, oh no, you didn't realize, dudes, gotta go.
Yeah, you know how those debates can just rabble.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's been following on Facebook or Twitter, the Twitter feeds. Didn't really. We'll jump in. Well, let's touch that topic a little bit. This week, of course, was the Republican National Convention, and I've not been really enthused. I'm a conservative, if anybody couldn't tell.
I thought you were liberal.
No, not even close. But having said that, I don't just lay down for anybody. I'll scuba dive with anybody.
I was about to say, wait a minute.
I will scuba dive with anybody, but which we'll be talking about that today. But what I will not. I'm not one of those lesser of two evils guys. You know, last election, I was really, really disappointed in who the GOP selected. I don't like wishy-washy candidates. I want somebody who really, really stands for, what I believe and is bold enough to actually say, you know what, I'm not going to compromise on my beliefs. I may have to compromise when it comes to passing legislation. Understand how that works. That's called statesmanship. Mm-hmm. But I want somebody who truly stands for it. And, I held my nose last time, and looks like I'm going to have to do it again. I was so disappointed in the convention. It was just kind of there was nothing really enthusiastic about the convention. In times past, there was a lot of build up to it and excitement because there's generally a lot of people behind the de facto nominee, and that's true on both sides of the aisle. This one just has I just don't have any kind of excitement at all. This is McCain 2.0 as far as I'm concerned. I thought Marco Rubio gave a really good speech, though. I'm like, why isn't he the?
Why isn't he the one?
He was good. Yeah, what was so funny? I had just tweeted because I live tweeted. I had just tweeted right before he spoke because he was like, and now here introduce Mitt Romney is Marco Rubio, and I'm like, okay, I like Marco. I've seen him, in a number of his things when he was running. For senator in Florida, but I had just tweeted, introductions never fail to bore me, which until then I always get bored with intros because it's usually this big drawn out thing that really just, come on, we're here to see or hear the person you're introducing, not you. And so people that introduce, usually if you've attended any city function, any ceremony where they have like a key speaker that's the wing commander or something, mm-hmm. Everybody down the line that's on the honored seats, the VIP seats there, has to give their little spiel, and it turns into a long spiel. I'm like, oh, come on, please. But Marco Rubio really impressed me. I'm like, wow, this is where we should have gone. This guy's bold. He gets it, and I could follow him. So anyway, without getting any more of the mishmash on that, I was singularly unimpressed with this year's Republican National Convention. Although I know a lot of people, both sides of the aisle, got quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Vocal and excited, positively and negatively, over Clint Eastwood's appearance.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, because
he's a good actor, although I don't like westerns at all. But some of the non-western stuff he's been in, I liked watching him. Not one of my favorite actors, but I can appreciate his qualities, his talent, and his style. And so, and he's one of those more of a libertarian types, which, the first part of libertarian is lib. So it should tell you something about libertarians, but so they typically tend to be more fiscally conservative, but socially liberal, which as far as I'm concerned, you might as well be a liberal. But, so I was really surprised that he was going to be the surprise guest. I thought, okay, this should be interesting. I'm not going to agree, but it should be interesting. And so he kind of came out, and he basically pulled off and most people are most people younger than me probably don't even remember this routine. But Bob Newhart used to do a number of hilarious routines where he would be like on a phone call. Only you only hear his side of the phone call.
Yeah.
And his expressions and what he would say, you knew what was going on the other side of the conversation, and that was what was so funny about it. Bob Newhart's delivery was, and his choice of monologue as part of the dialogue was masterful. And so basically Clint Eastwood pulled off one of these, only it was, instead of a phone call, it was, President Obama sitting in a chair beside him. Now, of course, yeah, a number of us tweeting were kind of like, okay, that was interesting. That was kind of funny, but weird. Not what we were expecting. And then the liberals just started back tweeting, and they're like, who let him out? He's, he should be in an old folks home, or has he got Alzheimer's? I mean, they've just been ragging on the guy. I'm like, he's 82?
He's old. I don't really know exactly how old he is.
But he's coming out in a new movie.
He's making movies, and he's directing, and he's working.
Give him a break. He's at least stepping up and saying what he said, saying what he believes in, even if you don't agree with that. I don't agree with half of what he says, but he was entertaining, if weird. But why trash the guy over it?
He's a good actor. He's a good director.
Yeah, I was going to say he is a very good director.
He's done a lot in his time,
mm-hmm.
and he's still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hope that I'm at 82. I can go up there and still be doing what he's doing.
Yes.
I mean,
I'm happy to be doing it in nearly 50.
He's 82, and he's got kids that are my age.
He's earned it.
Yeah, I agree.
He's
earned it. Leave Clint alone, guys.
That's right.
Just leave him alone. When you're 82 and have done what he's, when you've accomplished,
if you make it that
if you
far.
make it that old and can accomplish what he's done in his time, then you guys can talk.
So it'll be interesting to see, because I will probably watch it. I'll hold my nose and chew some Tums and stuff, and I'll probably watch at least parts of the DNC convention this week just to see how they respond. Because typically when you're having gone into various competitions, whether it's music or speech, debate, drama, comedy, you rarely want to be first, because usually that causes the people after you to step up their game, or it gives it, especially as in debate, because I used to do that competitively in high school. If you couldn't tell, when you go first, typically the affirmative side would give their opening speech, and then the negative would have an opportunity to give theirs, and you obviously had an opportunity to play both sides depending on the competition, and so the response, the negative response, it was usually much shorter, because you left yourself open for the flurry of notes that you're taking and grabbing all your little quotes and everything to kind of in the speech refute or counter, at least provide the counterpoint to the affirmative. So in this case, the DNC gets that opportunity.
Yeah,
so
because whoever goes first actually sets the bar, and then it's your responsibility to come up here and actually... And
I'll be honest with you, I think the RNC set the bar really low.
Oh.
I really do. I think they set it extremely low. I not just because I'm not impressed at all with the candidate, but I was watching all the speeches, especially the night, Thursday night. They brought a number of people out to tell touching stories and about Romney, and they were basically trying to paint the compassionate, caring person, because a lot of the negative stuff said about him, and saying, "Oh, he's just a cold businessman," and so they knew they needed to address that. Okay, so they chose the way they chose to do it. Unfortunately, anybody who's been paying attention knows that's what they were doing. And so to me, it came off as very contrived. And some of the speakers were either nervous and couldn't read the teleprompter well or couldn't speak well, and that's not necessarily fault of theirs, but it is what it is. But others who, like Newt Gingrich, who are good speakers, came off very plastic. I was thinking, watching Newt Gingrich speak, I was like, he's so clear, because he was obviously a competitor at one point. He so obviously does not, he wants to be the one that is being talked about, not the one talking about his competitor. And so it looked like he was trying to chew it through his gritted teeth the whole time. I was like, okay, I'm not believing you at all.
Well, I mean, nobody wants to actually
Lose.
Exactly. Nobody likes losing. I mean, let's face it, Robert.
That's right.
I mean,
I've been there. I've been on both sides of that.
When you gotta, succeed, to somebody, it's not.
It is tough.
It's tough.
Although sometimes it's okay. When I was in the Air Force, and for 1985, 1986, I got into the Air Force talent contest as a singer, and 85, I won at base level, got best of show, but then I got my face broke at command level. There are talented people who had been doing it a while and had a lot more experience, and so they just, I got sent home. I came back to Laughlin. Really was like, wow. Then 86, I was more prepared. And, it's kind of like Romney's situation. He tried the last time and got trounced, and this time it took him, he learned some things, I guess. So I was in the same situation. One at base level, one at command level, got to worldwide, and you talk about uber talented. You're talking about the creme de la creme from across the Air Force. Competitions really honing people's skills. And I was just happy to be there, and B, trying to get cast on the Air Force Tops in Blue performing showcase, which you don't necessarily have to win at worldwide to do. It just helps.
Right.
So I did my absolute best, but not thinking I had any kind of chance compared to the talent that I saw there of making the finals. But too much to my surprise, I made the finals. And but I got second place, which I was not unhappy with at all, because I went first, and then Norman C. Wright, the guy who got first, went after me, and he absolutely, I was on, but he nailed it. He was so I was like, I have no shame at all in placing second to that guy. He was absolutely stellar. So there are times when you're okay with it, but in this case, I don't think anybody was okay with it. There are a lot of people through gritted teeth.
Like I said, when you want a shot at the brass ring and you come up short, you're gonna be a little sore.
Yeah,
you're gonna be a little sore
on the face. Yep.
Yeah, you're gonna be a little sore, and as much as you want to go ahead and give them your support,
right? Because
they're in the party that you're part of.
Yeah,
it's still a slap in the face. Let's face it. You have to look at these people, and politicians can be a little rude and rough.
It's a nice way to say it. You still have to look at these people.
You have to look at these people. When you go in,
right.
It's one of those things. How can I put it? You won't live it down.
That's right. Right.
You won't live it down.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So this week should be kind of interesting with the DNC. Now, of course, obviously, it's kind of a formality that, of course, the president, unless there was a big coup going on, which there might be for VP. I don't know. Biden is really embarrassing himself in the party, and there are a number of people in the DNC have been thinking, maybe we can get Hillary.
Yeah,
to step in there.
Are you talking about the photos?
Just anything. Every time he turns around, he's opening his mouth and sticking. There's a saying: Biden is actually a very quiet guy. He only opens his mouth to change feet.
Oh God!
So he really he's been an embarrassment to the country and embarrassment to the Democrats. And I think that it's not going to happen. But I think if they wanted to improve or nail their chances, because personally I think they're going to win the election, but if they wanted to nail their chances, I think it would be perfect if they kicked Biden out and put Hillary in there. I don't like Hillary, but she's much better. She's at least serious about it.
She's very serious.
She doesn't. It would be. She'd never do it. I don't think she'd ever do it because she was no. But I think that would pretty much solidify any wavering people. I think they'd probably win it with her.
I don't really. This is one kind of subject that I really don't follow very much. I mean, I do catch the tidbits here and there,
Right.
But from what I've gathered, a lot of people really like Hillary. You know, so because she's just like you said. You know, she's business. You know, she's like for the government. Let's just move.
Yeah.
Let's just do what we need to do. And I mean,
She's 180 degrees. From me as far as worldview, political view, everything. But if I wanted to feel better about a VP that was on their ticket, she would be the one. So it'll be. But anyway, it's going to be interesting to see what's going on this week. I'm sure it's all going to be about taking slams at what was said the whole week.
All right, let me ask you, because I know that you were for this person at one time, and now they kind of dropped out of the limelight. But what's your take on the Palin, Sarah? What do you think? You still?
As soon as that election was over, she pretty much was going to be the cheerleader for, she was going to be the powerhouse that was able to draw people, to draw money to the various candidates. She's a Tea Party type. I really, really do like her. In fact, I like the fact that she angers a lot of liberals because they don't believe that she's got it on the ball. Does she have all the worldly detail knowledge that some of the other ones have? No way, shape, or form. You don't live in Alaska unless you're living on the internet. You don't live in Alaska removed from a lot of the stuff that's going on and stay in touch with all the, you don't know all the ambassadors from all the countries and all that stuff. You just don't. She's not a sophisticated person, but she's a very smart person. You don't parlay being the governor of Alaska and the one-time vice presidential nominee and into a level of celebrity and influence that she has without being pretty savvy in certain areas. And so, you got to give it to her. Even if you disagree with her, you got to give her that she knew how to play the game.
Yeah, I think she's cool. I mean, every time I've heard her talk, I know, like anybody else, when they talk, I mean, sometimes you might stumble a little bit.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
We have a nationally, internationally televised
podcast. We do, and I mean, sometimes, when you have a speech set up, you sometimes. Some people tend to stay real on focus, on task,
right, when
it comes to the speech verbatim. But sometimes you kind of veer off a little bit because you're telling something or you want to prove a point or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then to get back on that, you might fumble a little bit, and sometimes words get twisted, and I know that's happened. But God, I just wish the media would just not be so.
Well, they clearly had it out for her, and they sent people spying on her family and everything. They just
didn't help her.
And the Twitter hatred that flies over her and has actually, and y'all should be shamed, flew after all the
kids?
Women the kids.
Yeah.
But this week, all the women speakers, various governors, etc. Man, the Twitter feeds were just nasty. That guy that plays, he was on American Pie and all those. The guy with the whole cherry pie episode.
Oh,
or apple
Biggs,
pie, whatever it was.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, you talk about a foul-mouthed idiot. That guy, the things that he tweeted about Ann Romney and Paul Ryan's wife, and I mean, it just foul. I mean, just. I have no problem with somebody saying what they really feel about a person that they vehemently disagree with, but this guy said stuff that was like, who's that? He thinks he's a comedian. He's got his own show. Bill Maher.
Oh.
Like that. He must be a protege or something. You know, it just has no place there. I can't stand our current president. I can't stand the worldview and what he's doing, but you will never hear me say the kind of vile things that this guy and people like Bill Maher say. It's just, it doesn't need to be there.
You know, my thing about Bill Maher, I vaguely remember him back from the 80s. And the one movie that he came out in, and I really liked that movie, which was DC Cab. He came out in DC Cab.
Barely remember.
All right.
That movie.
And I actually have that on DVD. That's how classic I go back. Because,
I've got it on VHS.
I actually like the movie. And it is a good movie. But he went from really nobody to having his own show.
Yeah.
And
well, it's because he's very bombastic and he's so over the top, and he's so very liberal. And there are people who eat that up, and so he'll just take shots at everybody. I mean, he gets away with stuff. So you only see him on like pay channel stuff like that, or the internet. But anyway. So that took us way off the rail.
For what?
Way off the rail. So anyway, Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
Yep. So family got plans? Anything going on?
We got something going on tonight.
What?
So we got some plans. We're doing something right now, actually, as we speak. They some people came in from out of town, so they're kind of doing the pachanga right now.
They should be watching the podcast.
I think they
What's
are.
Up with that?
They're watching
should be watching the show.
They're stealing internet from the neighbor because they got unrestricted Wi-Fi.
So now, hey, you know what, folks? If you want to give your internet access to everybody in your neighborhood, that's your choice. But if you're doing it because you don't know that you're doing it, you need to educate yourselves because let me tell you, and Robert will agree with me, you're opening yourself up to people getting into all your business. I'm telling you.
You know, with the new operating systems, and I'm not even going to get into this, but with the new operating systems that are out there, like, you know, Windows 7 and stuff like that, if you're on an unsecured network, unless you're careful, there's a shared. For some reason the computers come out on all the networks. So I can see all the computers within that particular device. If it's a Wi-Fi, I can actually see them. So the neighbor actually has unrestricted internet, so I see the
and he's got the home share going.
Yeah, I got the two laptops because they're sharing a printer. So and that's, you know, but everything comes out on the network. So
you could actually load the drivers and print to their printer.
Yeah, if I wanted to, I can send.
That would be
start sending
that
pictures
would be
over
so
there.
Funny.
Start sending pictures to the printer and run their ink and their paper out if I wanted to.
Just send.
It's a color laser.
It is really.
Yeah, it's a color laser. But anyway,
man, who can afford that? I mean, that's a business class.
But
crazy.
And in the network name, you know, it's an Apple network, and that's truly what it is.
Wait a minute.
But they named it an Apple network, but it's not an Apple network. It's actually.
Do you think maybe they named it that way because they thought they were being smart and were like, oh, nobody's going to connect to this because it's Apple and most people don't have Apple?
No, I have no idea, but that's the SSID's
silly.
name is an Apple. Anyway,
wow,
Apple network.
Wow,
running Windows 7 machines. So,
well, the thing is, by default, Windows 7 does not share anything. You have to turn. Of course, they will ask you the questions as you're setting it up in your first.
Exactly.
But most people don't read.
They don't read it.
Okay, click OK. Click OK. Click OK.
And there you go. Now your network is shared, and not only do I have access to your network, I have access to your documents, to your pictures, to your files, and of course, you know, if I hit a couple of keystrokes, I can actually look at everything that you're doing.
Yep. Be
very careful, guys. If you don't know what you're doing, ask someone. If you're watching this podcast, obviously, you know Robert, you know myself, or you know, make some calls.
We'll help you out. You can jump in the chat room. Join us at www.ustream.tv/channel/2-guys-who-dive, or just search for Two Guys Who Dive on Ustream, and you can join the chat room. And you know, this we don't just obviously we don't just talk about scuba diving. We'll entertain your questions or comments about a number of things. It's all entertainment.
We're well diverse in different types.
We
of,
are. We are diverse.
We are diverse.
That's right.
But no, so yeah, that's going on. But I know that we were hopefully planning a dive sometime. When were you going to do it?
I wanted to do one tonight.
Tonight. Why don't we save it for tomorrow night?
Well, we can do that.
Tomorrow night, I won't have anything planned. We will dive tomorrow night.
Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Okay,
yeah, we're dying to get a night dive in.
Yes, so if you're a scuba diver, you're certified,
Yeah.
and have a couple of dives under your belt, please give us a call if you want to try a night dive. There are a couple of things that you'll need to have. Is definitely a primary light.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to join us,
The brighter the better.
yes,
You got to warm up the little fishes.
yeah, and if you are certified and have never done a night dive and would like to try it, what better to do it than to dive with a dive instructor / dive master / everything, and myself, and we glad to bring you along.
Yep. Let's see. All right. Did we talk about Expendables 2 last week?
We didn't, but I got to see the movie.
You finally got to see it? Okay,
I got to see the movie.
I got to hear your impression.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't do impressions.
I don't do impressions.
I'll be back. All right, so
I told you I'm back.
So what'd you think? Better? Okay, start off. Better or worse than the first one? Or same?
I would give it a little bit more.
Okay.
Than the first one.
Agree.
A little bit more because of course they introduced more action actors.
Yeah.
All the actors on there I liked. I watched them when I was younger.
And when they were younger.
But you know what? They still look pretty darn good.
Jean-Claude still. I mean, look baggy-eyed, but man, that guy is in great shape.
That was the only thing that his eyes were. What's wrong with his eyes?
I thought maybe he'd stayed up way too late.
That cocaine is a wonderful drug, isn't it?
I guess. Sly still got it going. I mean, the guy had veins. His veins had veins.
His veins had dialogue in the movie.
I'm telling you, man. He just kind of stood there and just all he had to do was just slightly clinch and. Beep, 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 beep. I mean, everything was like, golly.
All right, now based on his appearance on this movie, when he redid the Rambo, the Rambo movie, he was still kind of heavy set. He had already started to get back into shape.
Yeah.
Because he had stopped acting, he had gained some weight. I don't know if it was for a movie or whatnot, but he had gained some weight, and it was tough for the guy to get it off, especially at his age. But he pulled it off in this one. He looked, with the aside from his face, it looked a little old. His body was back to like original Rambo. I mean, he was
in good shape.
I mean, I liked it. Van Damme looked pretty sharp with his glasses. He looked like back in the 80s, back when the 90s. But the minute he took his glasses off, I was like, whoa, what happened?
It almost looked like he still had his glasses on. Wait a minute, did he just take his glasses off?
But I liked seeing Bruce Willis, play.
Actually get more active this time.
Get more active this time. Arnold, of course, just can't deny
And of course,
Arnold.
the one-liner.
The one-liners
It
in
was
all of them.
one-liner heaven. The yippee-ki-yay and it was all there.
No, I like when he ran into Chuck Norris. And he goes, I heard you got bit by a king cobra. It's like, yeah.
Classic joke.
Classic joke. That's an actual joke, an internet joke or whatever. He goes, yep, and after 3 days of excruciating pain, the cobra died.
That was great.
That was hilarious. My brother, I don't know if he's watching or not. He had a bumper sticker on the back of his Dodge Neon, and it actually read, powered by Chuck Norris. It was a really cool bumper sticker, and he got really upset. Somebody jacked it from him in the parking lot of the mall.
Wait a minute, the car or the
No, the sticker.
the sticker?
Yeah, they stole the bumper sticker off the back of his car.
Who steals a bumper sticker? I ask you.
You can actually
Who does that?
You can actually find a bumper sticker online if you look
hilarious.
powered by Chuck Norris bumper sticker. You'll find it for sale for about $15. It's actually really funny. He bought it at Spencer's in San
Of
Antonio
course,
sometime
Spencer's.
back.
Spencer.
I mean, this was way back. This was about 4 years ago.
That's
But it was
funny. 4
hilarious.
years is way back. Oh gosh.
Well, for
I'm
me,
feeling really old.
4 years ago, that was way back.
Yeah.
But,
I was just, speaking of way back, we had some friends over who were, the husband and wife were taking a look at my wife's craft room that we had remodeled and everything, and I was using my Lean Six Sigma tools to help design and set it all up, and so now that they have 2 daughters and a son, and now their younger daughter has gone off to college, Courtney.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so now she's the mother has got designs on converting
her room,
one of the rooms, into a craft room. So they came over to kind of get ideas based on what we did, because I'm pretty proud of that, and Tara's pretty proud of that. Well, I gave them the 50-cent tour of the house. They showed them the City Fox Studios here, and took them out to our shed, because they were like, "Wow, that's a big shed." And I said, "Well, it's a mess right now because we got stuff moving in and out, and I have a old turntable sitting in there, and the son, who is 15, 14, something like, I can't remember. He was like, "What's this?"
Oh,
yeah, exactly. I'm like,
God.
"Ouch, daggers!" Oh. I said, "That's a turntable." And he said, "Well, okay, so what do you do with that?" I said, "Well, you put records on it." "Well, how does that work?" Oh, and of course, I have a whole, almost like a shopping cart looking thing, of a bunch of, most of them are 12-inch singles, but we do have some albums in there. And of course, I said, "Well, here's what they look like," and I pull out the vinyl, and he's looking at this, and he was like, How do you play that?" And of course, I don't have it hooked up, so I couldn't play it. But I said, "You set it on here, and then the needle goes on there, and the grooves that you see is actually a spiral. It's not concentric circles. It's a spiral. And so as it spins, you turn it on, and it spins, and the needle follows the track in. And basically, these pits and grooves that are in there are what's the actual recording. It's pressed into the vinyl, and those vibrations are picked up by the
needle,
the needle, and it's translated into sound that we hear." And he was like, it was like magic, describing this to him. It was just, but I just felt so.
I gotta honestly tell you though, in certain situations, records are actually coming back. They sound better, and they really do. Of course, you got to have a really awesome system.
Right.
You can still find, I think Pioneer, I think JBC, and a couple
still
of
make turntables.
They still make the turntables, but they're kind of pricey. And you would need a component system in order to connect them.
Right.
But they also are coming out with some new ones now that are like USB.
What?
My brother
has AD.
one.
It's analog to digital.
Exactly.
Wow.
You can actually plug it into a computer and record.
That is amazing.
My brother has one, and I actually bought an old, and this is old. It's like from the 80s, a vinyl album that I saw at a
flea market.
No, it was at a half-price bookstore in San Antonio.
Yeah,
because they still sell albums there. So I was going through, and I found one that was like, wow, that was like, I remember that. So I picked it up, had my brother, re-record it for me on a disc, because you can't find that album anymore. And of course, you can hear the little
crackle,
the crackles and stuff like that on the CD, but it sounds like I'm listening to a record. It sounded really good. Yeah. Of course, he's got a little mixing, something like you have here,
right?
Because he does a little bit of DJ work on the side. So
wiki.
Yeah. So he was. But you know what? It sounded all right. It didn't sound too bad.
There's something a little bit comforting, and boy, are we going way off the mark here. There's something a little bit comforting for those who remember those days, to kind of going back and just listening and hearing the crackle. And amazingly, a lot of younger kids probably don't even recognize what it is, but you hear a lot of your modern artists that will layer in that old phonograph sound as part of an intro to a song or an outro to a song. You hear that little crackling, and it's all an affectation, but it creates a nostalgic kind of feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
But yeah,
USB turntables. That's just too cool.
You gotta Google that. They're about
cool.
$99. And yeah, you plug them in either to a computer or to some kind of audio device or something, and record.
Well, okay, so
Well, anyway, Expendables, really good movie. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. You'll see a lot of actors in there.
Well worth it.
Well worth it. From what I gathered, they're already in talks for the Expendables 3.
3?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
My boy,
who is missing that needs to be in the next one?
Steven Seagal.
I hadn't even thought of Steven Seagal, but yes, you're right.
Yeah, Steven Seagal.
Somebody suggested Jackie Chan, and I don't know that. I think he's too comedic to be in it. I suppose they could, but I think he was never in a serious
enough movie. I know that he made some serious movies in Japan before he became a star here in the U.S.
Right.
But his type of action is different than these guys. These guys like blowing things up and going crazy. Shooting 50 caliber machine guns with one arm. He's
hilarious.
He's not about that. Did you see when Arnold was shooting that gun? His body was like shaking.
I know. The whole thing.
His whole body was shaking.
It was hilarious.
But he still pulled it off.
Yep. Who else? We had a list going at work the other day of people that should be in there. And somebody had suggested Jackie Chan. I was like, oh, no.
No, Steven Seagal is actually supposedly one of the ones that's in there. They had a friend of mine was telling me that Jet Li made a small cameo because I don't know if you're aware of this, but he retired from actual movies. He retired from making movies.
So he only did this intro part.
He did the first Expendables in this one because he does small little parts. He won't make a whole movie, so he does small little parts here and there. And in this one, he only agreed to do a small portion.
And it was really small.
Yeah, it was
very active, but it was very.
And
small.
even at that, he retired from actually cinema fighting. So when on this one, I was really surprised to see the actual fight scene in it. I was like, wow, he actually did a fight scene. And it was even though he fights real fast, it was still pretty lengthy. But no, it was a really good movie. You guys got to go check it out.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I give it
thumbs
up.
There was a cute line about that's what I call Chinese takeout.
Yeah, it was actually pretty. It was really good. A really good movie. You got to go check it out.
The only thing I had a problem with in the movie was how did they know? How did different people that showed up know when and where to show up? Especially Chuck Norris. I'm like, he just suddenly shows up there. I'm like, what?
Well, you see, that was kind of the whole parody of thing. He kept saying, I work alone. And they kept referring to him as Lone Wolf.
Right.
Well, that's from his Lone Wolf McQuade movie because he kept saying, I work alone. But as far as the him popping in and everything,
our producer, my wife, suggested Sigourney Weaver.
Oh yeah, she's gonna come out fighting aliens.
That would be hilarious. She would be hilarious.
Yeah,
because that's where. That would be kind of cool.
So, that was funny because he just would pop out of nowhere. So I thought that was the funniest thing. Like,
it was cute.
How did he get there?
And of course, the hair color was heavy on him. I'm sorry, there's no way he's that red still.
Oh no. He even had a facelift, I think.
Yeah, you could tell most of them had some sort of work done.
Kind of work done, yeah.
Yeah. So I was entertained. I really liked it. It was a little bit better than the first one. The first one was much more serious. This one had playing a lot more to the comedy, but
I started cracking up with that snake one. That was
hilarious.
After 3 days of excruciating pain,
the cobra died. All right, so we kind of were touching on a little bit of this earlier, but the title episode this week is That Was No Accident, and what we wanted to kind of talk about was share a few different stories about some dive accidents, some situations, and kind of talk about a little bit about what went wrong, things that we observe about the story. And so I pulled together a couple of interesting stories. One from the Alert Diver magazine, which is from Diver Alert Network, and also an accident that was in the latest scuba diving magazine. So I'll try and skip through some of the parts, but just kind of get you the background on it. The one out of Alert Diver is titled "You'll Be Okay," and this is actually written by the mother of a deceased diver. So you know this had to be tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So she starts out describing the diver, which of course is her daughter. She changes her name to Claire for purposes of the article. 25-year-old planning dives on the West Coast, which, by the way, West Coast is cold water.
Very cold.
Yeah. The dives would be her first since she completed her open water certification 2 months earlier. Wow. So just newly certified. Contacted the shop that certified her. They told her an upcoming charter assured her dives would be within her ability. Okay, so you assume you can trust the dive operation to tell you the truth and not try to just sell you a dive trip. When she was asked about a dive buddy, she was told she would be paired up on the boat, and that's pretty standard fare. She mentioned that all of her training dives had been from shore, and that this would be her first boat dive. Okay, so that would be my first bit of concern as a diver, and certainly as a person running the dive boat. I'd want to know, has anybody gone diving from a boat before? Because I would pay particular attention to brief them on things they need to know about diving from a boat. I certainly wouldn't throw them, quote unquote, in the deep end on that situation. Let's see. She was told a dive professional would be on board to assist her, and she decided to join the trip. Okay. So far, so good, for the most part. Okay, so the actual dive. On the way to the dive site, Claire was introduced to her dive buddy, who, for the purpose of the story, will be called Jake. He had done 18 dives in his lifetime. Okay, that's a red flag for me right there. Being paired up. If I'm a new diver, I'm going to be paired with somebody who's
new as well.
Fairly new. And had not been diving in more than a year.
Out of skills.
I'm telling you. Okay. And almost all his previous dives were in the Caribbean. And that's why I mentioned that West Coast diving is typically colder water because of the way the water circulates in the Pacific. All the water on our planet typically circulates clockwise. And so in the Pacific, it's coming down from Alaska. So it's pulling colder water down, whereas in the Atlantic, which is why we have the big storms, it circulates clockwise. And so our East Coast gets the warm water coming up from the equator. All right. So as the boat approached the dive site, both divers expressed reservations, which, well, they should, when they learned that their dive instructor on board would be training a student rather than diving with them.
Wow.
Yeah. They were told not to worry and that everything would be fine. Bad call. Okay, Jake had difficulty getting his equipment set up and told the instructor his rental BC was too tight, which should have been tried on and fixed at the dive shop, which made it hard for him to breathe. Once in the water, Claire was unable to descend, so the crew slipped additional weight into her BC pockets. So she didn't even have any idea of her weight.
Ideal weight.
When I teach the class, I make a point of getting the students, they don't absolutely have to, but I try to get them to, once we zero in their weight, I try to get them to make a note of it. Make a note, they ask, well, how much detail I should get? I said, as a new diver, as much detail as you possibly can, because you're not going to have this stuff memorized. And this will be this will all be new to you. So if you're diving in fresh water in a 3 mil shorty and you zero in with 4 pounds of weight, you need to know that, because you learned in the class when you go to salt water, you're going to need more weight than that.
One thing that happens with me is, since it's when I'm diving, I'm diving and it's good, but
right.
I do go back to my dive log to see, okay, how much weight do I actually use? Because I tend to forget.
Mm-hmm.
You forget the smallest little details like that.
Right.
With my 5 mil, for some reason, I always remember how much weight I dive with that. But with my shorty, I tend to forget because it's less weight.
Right.
I actually have that I dive with 8 pounds, but I can actually go down with a lot less than 8. I went through my log and I saw that I did a dive with only 6 pounds of weight with my shorty. So when we were diving this 2 weeks ago, it was I guess I felt like I was properly weighted. I mean, I didn't have a problem keeping my my buoyancy in check.
Right,
but
right.
of course I was doing the breathing control. And I wasn't struggling either. It was I was doing okay, but I could have actually pulled it off with less weight, and it probably would have been a little easier on me. But those things are very important to note down because you will forget. So be very detailed, especially
and your dive profile changes.
Yeah,
over time.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
People gain weight, lose weight. They change their BC or they change anything that you change on your gear. You're diving with a light versus not. Anything can change your profile, and so making sure you make a note of those things is very important. Okay, so they added more weight on her to get her down. By the time their problems were resolved, the other divers had descended. So Claire and Jake descended alone. Huge mistake. Neither of them have ever been diving there, and so they go down by themselves.
They're not aware of the terrain, the area, the conditions of the water.
Exactly.
It's not a good thing.
Exactly. So, okay, a plankton bloom, typical for for the season and location, limited visibility near the surface. The divers overcame their anxiety by giving each other okay sign repeatedly as they descended. Okay, that's good communication. At about 30 feet, the visibility began to clear, but it was dark, and neither diver had a light, probably because there was so much stuff above them. And we know this from diving in Amistad, same kind of situation. Let's see, about 10 minutes into the dive, Jake turned to look at Claire, who'd been swimming right behind him, and realized she was not there. After a moment, he saw someone in the dimness and swam toward the person. As he approached, he saw it was Claire and realized she was unconscious. Grabbing her by her BCD, he attempted to ascend. He kicked hard but was unable to make progress toward the surface. He did not think to release her weights or inflate her BC and was soon overcome with exhaustion. Jake struggled to get enough air through his regulator and began to panic. He released Claire and headed for the surface, spitting out his regulator on the way. And see, this is all of this is very typical for somebody who is either new or just inexperienced in the dive. He hit the surface gasping, choking, and unable to call for help. The captain noticed him struggling and motored to him. Unable to talk or breathe, Jake kept pointing down. Once the captain realized there was a problem, he made his distress call and initiated a diver recall by tapping the boat's ladder with a hammer. And that's a pretty common procedure right there. Not all divers responded to the call promptly, and some decided to do a safety stop before surfacing. Precious minutes were lost. Claire was found in approximately 60 feet of water, which is just within a basic open water certification. You're certified to 60 feet by the instructor and another diver. CPR was initiated once she was brought aboard. A Coast Guard boat arrived and transferred to an ambulance on shore. Claire's heart was started in the ambulance on the way, which shocks me. Probably the cold water helped that, but where she was placed on life support in the intensive care unit. She never regained consciousness. 3 days after the accident, doctors determined that she would never have enough brain function to breathe on her own, and they discontinued life support. So, what do you think?
Lots of mistakes. First of all, and like we discuss this a lot, and if you pay attention to the podcast or us in general when we dive, any reason is a good reason to call a dive.
Absolutely.
If you had any kind of reservation regarding even, it doesn't matter whether or not you pay money to go to these places, nothing is worth your life.
Right.
If you're unsure, I mean, I've said, you know what, I can't do it. You know,
Yep.
like there's no reason to stress a dive. I stressed one, and it kind of ended in catastrophic failure. I was fatigued. I was tired. Learned this one firsthand. Luckily, I didn't panic.
Right. That's the key.
I was well aware of my situation. I assessed it. I diagnosed it really quick. Went down. Since Robert was actually a little further away from me, I had to kick a little further. Got to him, and we took care of the situation.
Yep.
But any reason, I cannot stress this
Yeah.
more. Any reason is a good reason to call a dive. Now, if these people already had some concerns before even getting in the water, you should have just said, you know what, I don't feel comfortable. I'm not
Right.
going to do it.
Right.
So I think that's mistake number one. That was a diver error on their part.
Yeah.
Two, they relied, which is, like you said, not very uncommon. If they tell you, yeah, we're going to pair you up, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, you're going to hold them at face value because you think
Right.
that this is a legitimate, operation. So
Yeah.
you're going to think, okay, it's not. They know what they're doing. But then, the minute I would have seen, okay, where the other divers that were there, like, for example, if I would have seen this being there and I saw that this was going on, I would have taken them under my wing and said, okay, you know what?
Precisely.
Why don't you guys stay with us?
Yep. Yep.
Since you guys are new, we're not new. He's going to be busy. Don't descend. Somebody should have taken them pretty much under the wing.
Yeah.
When you go on these dives, I think you've done it. You talk to people and you're
Yes.
like, hey, so what are you doing?
Right.
And
Right.
it's not that you're trying to be nosy, but
No.
you want to know who you're diving with.
Right.
I know Robert. I know his skill sets. He knows mine. We both were very, very cautious divers. I tell my son, all the time, he worries when we go diving and I take a while before I come back. He's worried, and I get my phone, and he has called me like 17 times. He's like, Dad, I was just kind of worried about you, and I told him, don't ever worry. Yes, accidents can happen, and I'm sure they will. I just hope that I don't ever run into one. But, I can't foresee these things. One thing that I do know is I do know my limitation.
Right.
And I do know that the person I'm diving with has my back and I have theirs. I'm 100% confident in my
Right.
skills.
Right.
I know that because of the training that I have and the dives that we've done,
Yeah.
I know that if I had to, I can get to the surface. I might not be okay, but I know that
At least you're treatable.
I'm going to be treatable on the surface, and I can't really be
Yeah.
treatable when my heart hasn't fed my brain oxygen for more
Right.
than 4-6 minutes or whatever it is.
Right.
So, but God, somebody should have taken them.
Yeah.
That's my take on this.
I think the two parties at fault here were actually the three parties at fault here were the divers themselves for pushing on with a dive that they weren't prepared for.
Right.
A huge fault on the part of the dive shop
The operation.
for going ahead and convincing them to purchase the dive and not properly fitting them and weighting them going in, and then finally the huge mistake on the part of the boat operators that should have they shouldn't have paired them up that way and should not have let them go without an actual professional. Almost all of the dive boats that I've been on, and we've been a number of different places, have had at least 2 certified professional divers, typically either a couple of dive masters or an actual instructor and dive master. And so there's usually somebody that can be paired up. And in fact, when in 2006 or 7, whenever it was that Tara and I went to the Keys and we dove on the Spiegel Grove, which is an awesome dive, by the way. When we went there, we had a great time, but one of the things that they made sure of, they asked if we were both advanced divers. At the time, I was only an advanced diver, and Tara was a basic. And they said, okay, well, she needs to have done a deep dive, and we need to see that on her log. and you need to pay the extra. I think it was $50 for a dive master to dive with you, because it needs to be somebody who is professionally able to recognize any symptoms of nitrogen narcosis, etc., and knows how to deal with the situation if it gets out of hand. And so they were very specific about that. It wasn't like, oh, well, we'll have somebody professional on board, that can help you out. It was, if you want to do this dive, you will have to pay for this person to do it. And of course, wanting to do the dive, I said, sure, let's do it. Yeah. So that would have been the right way to handle this. The other big thing was when they got on board the boat, not making sure that all of the people were aware of the situation. When Tara and I went to Curacao, I think I've shared this before, one of the dives we went on, there was a woman on there that was her 5th dive or something. It was, or 10th dive. She'd just gotten certified. This was her 10th dive ever. And so, of course, my instructor feelers went up, and I was like, okay, I'm going to be paying attention. Now, obviously, we're going to have an instructor that was leading the dive. And so he was like, okay, well, I'm buddying up with you. And I was like, perfect. But I also was, because he also, as the leader of the dive, he had to be aware of everybody. So most everybody on the group were well experienced divers, a number of photographers and videographers and stuff like that. But I automatically went into the mode that I was going to enjoy it. Tara and I were going to have a good time, but I was going to be watching her as well, because I knew his attention was going to necessarily be divided amongst the group, because he is still leading the dive, even though she was paired up with him. So I kept an eye on her as well. Fortunately, nothing happened. I mean, her buoyancy control was all over the map. But that's fine. She enjoyed the dive, and she was trying to perfect, and he had everything under control. I was just prepared. We kept close enough that if something happened and his attention was pulled and she got into trouble, I could step in and help. And that's the kind of attention. If the divers had been known by the rest of the group, hey, we're new or inexperienced, then maybe some of them would have been able to step up. Now, it's not their fault that if they did know that they didn't step up, but right. Somebody would have probably.
Yeah, I would have said, just out of courtesy, just kind of stay close.
Yep.
Or I would have just been watching them. Even like, for example, like when I help you out with your students and stuff, I tend to hang back. And I'm enjoying the dive because I just like being in the water. But at the same time, I'm just being cautious because even though we are diving, Rob is instructing the class, so he's in a work mode, and it's you're diving with new people.
Yeah.
This is a new experience for them. They're in a different environment. It's it can be a little strange at times.
Absolutely.
But of course you're playing at this point with the whole going up and the down, because you're doing the whole buoyancy thing, and it's so. But I'll hang back and just observe, make sure everybody's okay, which is something I probably would have done in this situation. I probably would stay close and just kind of watch them. We would have had fun because you're diving, but just making that.
The sad part is that entire incident could have been avoided. They should have gone ahead and called the dive. I think that's what. Yep. I think that would have been the best course. Okay, let's check out another one. This is out of the latest scuba diving magazine, and the title of it is "Lack of Training Prep Spells Doom." Okay. Dave's friends would never believe he went to more than 200 feet. He had even borrowed a computer so he could prove it. Okay, so that tells you something. I know that people call diving a sport. I don't call it a sport, precisely because I don't think there should be anything competitive about it or comparative. It should be, and you will meet divers who, hey, how many dives you logged? And then they were quick to tell you how many they have and whether they do dive. I dive with 2 steel tanks, and they're all about showing what they can do. And to me, that immediately tells me they're not a safe diver.
No.
But so here's a description of the divers that are involved in this accident. Dave had just completed his open water dive certification 2 weeks before his 19th birthday.
All right, new and young.
Yep. So you think driving and drinking and all these other things that are very, very, for immature people are not smart, that they are inviting accidents. Imagine the diving aspect of it. He dreamed of pursuing diving as a career. Okay, that's great. Love that. I've trained people who
that was me.
Young. Yeah, there you go. He wanted to work his way up to become a dive instructor as quickly as he could, and then he wanted to dive around the world. Again, great ideas, great goals. He read through dive magazines, watched TV shows, read online reports of dive adventures and expeditions, compiling a list of dives he wanted to make. Again, great research. Love that. His buddies Roy and Clarence have been diving a little longer by a few months.
Still new divers.
Yep. They were both about a year older than Dave. Okay, so all young guys, all inexperienced divers, but with more ambition than probably forethought. So here was the dive. Morning air was only slightly warmer than 60-degree water temperatures. Okay, so you know they were in full wetsuits.
Yeah, it's cold.
But the wind was calm, the sun was bright, and the boat headed out. When the dive master explained that they were anchored near a deep drop-off with depths dropping quickly to 1,000 feet or more, each knew what the other was thinking. They wanted to go deep. And of course, they're only certified as basic open water divers to go 60 feet. Now, there's no, and I've said this before, there's no scuba police, but never exceed your training and experience. So the threesome geared up quickly and entered the water before any other divers. So they probably didn't wait for any kind of briefing or anything. And here's why. They didn't want anyone to question their plan to dive deep. As soon as they were all in the water, they began swimming down as quickly as they could. There wasn't much to see below 100 feet, as we've said many times. But they kept pushing. None of them had ever been that deep before. Well, of course, because as open water divers, 60 feet is
60
it.
feet is it.
They finally pulled up when it started getting dark. Oh, bad. So they probably didn't have any lights. Dave looked at his dive computer and it read 227 feet. That's insane. I wouldn't even do that as an instructor, and I'm fully certified to 130 feet. Although he was having a little trouble focusing, you think, nitrogen narcosis, I'm sure, was in full effect at that point.
Mm-hmm.
His head felt fuzzy, of course. All three of the divers felt the effects of nitrogen narcosis. They stayed at that depth less than a minute. They shouldn't have been down there at all.
Yeah.
Before agreeing to ascend some, hoping the feeling would go away. They made it to 190 feet and leveled off. Still well below recreational dive limits.
Yeah.
Why their computers, well, I'm sure their computers were screaming, you're in a decompression dive. Okay, so here's what happened. Dave runs out of air first. He didn't know how to react.
Panic.
Dave was the most recent certified of the group. Even though I know in the training, you get told exactly. You get to actually feel what that's like. Because we turn off the air.
Right.
And let you feel that. So you can signal and do the signal. And so you know what it feels like. And you should already know. You do the low on air or out of air, or whatever your situation is. And you get to your dive buddy quickly. You should be staying close to them anyway. He was puzzled that there was nothing coming out of his regulator. Well, and here's the other thing, too. We've talked about this. The gear you're using may or may not be adequate to the type of diving you're doing. If you get lower-end gear, it's not typically going to be suited for really cold water or certainly the real deep diving. It may not work correctly there. It'll work, but it probably won't work as efficiently. So quickly he looked around and found Roy, who should have been right next to him. He swam over to his buddy, which that's a shock. He was able to swim over to him, making the out-of-air signal he had just practiced during his certification training a few weeks before. and a slashing motion across his throat. Okay, it's the right signal. Roy realized what was happening and gave Dave his alternate air source. As soon as they got the situation under control, which I beg to differ, I don't think it was under control at that point, they began ascending, and Clarence swam up. He was out of air too. No big surprise there, going down to 227 feet. Dave gave the alternate air source regulator to Clarence, and then he took off swimming for the surface. So Dave, the newest diver of them all, gives up his alternate and starts heading for the surface at 190 feet. You know, the controlled emergency swimming ascent that students get trained on
It's 30 feet.
is 30 feet. So Dave makes a free dive or a free ascent to the surface from 170 feet. That just amazes me. Roy and Clarence follow quickly behind. Due to their limited air supply, the pair ascended directly to the surface without making a safety stop or any sort of decompression stop. Because I assure you, they were in decompression dive.
Oh, yeah.
They immediately saw that the dive boat crew was in process of rescuing Dave. He was unconscious and floating on the surface, as I'm sure he was. Probably had pneumothorax, probably an air embolism, any number of things that spelled his doom. The crew's efforts to resuscitate Dave were unsuccessful, and he was pronounced dead later at the local hospital. Wow. And it even says in here, it says, the divers made a series of mistakes related to planning and preparation. Absolutely. Inexperienced, ill-equipped for the dive, no real goal other than to go deep, and no idea what would happen to their air supply at depth. They didn't have enough dive theory to understand how quickly your air is used up the deeper you go. Mm-hmm. And it even says in here, there are no dive police. That's my famous saying.
There's nobody saying there.
No one in the water stops divers from doing stupid things. And that's so absolutely true.
See, folks, this is why we get these magazines. They have actually, priceless stories,
things you can learn.
Yeah, things you can learn. I guess, man, what do you say to something like that? Having been both of us, having gone to,
the max,
to the max that we possibly could within recreational limits. We've said this before. I've said it. There, at 100 feet, if you've ever dove to 100 feet, the water temperature, the thermocline changes. It gets cold. It can be 100 and, what was it last time we dove? It was about 100 and, I'm going to exaggerate a little, maybe about 105 surface temp.
Right.
But when we got down to 100 feet, it was cold and dark. We dove at exactly noon. I think the sun was at its highest peak right over us. It was at noon.
Right overhead.
At about 90 feet, it started getting dark. At 100 and definitely at 105, it was black. It was like we were doing a night dive.
Yep.
So these guys went down, obviously, wherever they were diving, probably a little clearer than our lake, but still it gets dark.
Yeah. There's just not, unless you're doing like we like the wall dives, unless you're going to look at a wall, there's nothing else to see there.
No. 200 feet, that's just crazy.
I can't stress enough for folks that are interested in diving, that are already divers. Get the competitive concept out of your head. It is not a sport in a competitive sense. It's just not worth it to nobody of any integrity cares how deep you've gone, how many times you've pushed the limit. What they care about is, have you seen some cool stuff, and have you got some interesting stories, not have you defied death once again.
Now, when we did this dive here and we went to the max, as far as recreational limits are concerned, we didn't plan to do this. It wasn't like, okay, we wanted to do a deep dive and we were going to go deep, but we didn't know how deep the area where we were diving actually went. So when our computer started telling us it's you got like 2 minutes at this depth before you're going to go into full deco, that was a sign. When my computer started beeping, my computer never beeps. My computer is on the more reserved side.
Right.
Yours is tweaked. My computer was telling me it's time to get out. Robert, it's like, go up. I stood there for a few minutes and looked down, and it still kept going down. And I thought, okay, this is it. And I've actually made that comment. There's nothing down there worth seeing, because you can't see anything unless you have a light.
Which we did, but
I mean, still, we were looking at a wall formation that just kept going down. So Robert was taking pictures, which kind of led us to that depth, and we just kind of let's see a little bit more, and but we also noticed too that we were able to handle the dive at that depth without any kind of nitrogen issues. Right. Robert suffered a little bit because he was focusing too hard to try to get a photo shot, which is very common because you're
concentrating so hard.
He was concentrating to get a shot that it just snuck up on him real quick, but he was able to you
recognize it and you move. You don't just hang there like those guys did.
No, but man, that is
crazy.
Whack. 200 feet. That
227 feet as a new diver when you have no sort of deep dive training at all.
So what's the moral of the story? They set a record, all right. They went to their deepest dive and somebody died.
And become fatal. So we got one last one, and this one is an actual YouTube video. There's a number of both fascinating and disturbing dive accident videos that are out there, but this one I thought was kind of interesting. It had a good ending, but it's a great illustration of what happens. Let's take a look at this.
A dangerous turtle?
Yeah, a dangerous turtle. A fascination with big consequences. Let me get this playing. There we go. Okay, so you see this turtle in the middle, and he's got some narrative going on here. Now, drift diving is always a challenge, and it's one of the things that that I include as part of the advanced diver course. Now, this is a very strong current. This reminds me of a current that Tara and I dove in Cozumel. It's all drift diving in Cozumel, but we did a dive that you literally did have to kick this hard to stay in place. To me, if you need to kick this hard to stay in place, this is probably not the kind of drift dive I'd want to go on. I mean, you want to just be following along. This is not the most beautiful of coral reefs that I've seen. But they saw this turtle, and so they were checking it. I thought maybe this was going to turn out to be where somebody was jacking with this turtle, and it turned around and bit his finger off. Which they eat coral. Yeah. So that's strong jaws on these things. So, okay, what in the world they were doing? Okay, look at this. Fascinating. I forget to check my air. See, you're diving in a stressful situation. You're going to go through your air quicker, and they're doing a cardinal sin here. They're touching the wildlife. They're harassing the wildlife there. Never, ever do that. So they're watching this turtle, and then his breathing becomes difficult, which it would be, and you can hear it. He's pulling on the tank. He's pulling the tank. So the current carries the group away, which it will once you stop fighting against it. So he's already ascending. He's already getting higher than them. He realizes he has very little air left. This is the reason why we carry the noisemaker.
Yeah,
we carry actual shakers. So they're very distinctive sound. They carry a long way. So he decides to perform an emergency ascent from 18 meters. Now, what I couldn't hear was the awe sound.
Mm-hmm.
So he makes it to the surface, and he's floating there. 500 meters from shore. He sees his boat, or a boat, way off in the distance. Now, he has no actual signaling device. So he removes his mask and puts it around his neck to show that he's okay. Thing is, there's no guarantee he's okay. He came up, he did an emergency ascent from 18 meters. So he's basically almost 60 feet down.
Yep. I'd be safe to say there's something in his body that just isn't working right now. Or at least damaged.
Well, and he could have been okay. In the previous story, one of the two guys that came up on the alternate air source, here he is trying to make a noise with his tank, with his camera, trying to get the guy's attention. If he'd had a proper signaling device, he could have. You hear him calling for help. And also, I carry a signal sausage, a dive buoy marker. Of course, the boat can't hear him. But the two guys who came up with the previous story, one of them ended up suffering decompression sickness, had to go into a recompression chamber multiple times, and has never been the same since. The other one had no effects whatsoever. Wow. Just shows you never know.
Right.
Now, this guy in the video here, you saw where he started to lose his fin, and he caught it before he got away. And then he got smart and realized, you know what, I can use it as a signaling device. So he waves it up in the air. So he improvised. So he used a little bit of problem-solving skills. So he signals this boat, and it turns out not to be his boat. And evidently that's his daughter. I'm sure his daughter was very happy to see him. So, remarkable. Now, that had a happy ending. Although, I'll be surprised if he didn't have to have something checked out. See, I would have been, if I would have immediately announced I had to do an emergency ascent from, 18 meters, and I'd be looking for some O2.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he got checked out when he got to the shore.
Oh, I would hope so.
That's kind of scary, but I kind of like seeing stuff like that because it reminds me to constantly be aware of my air. We constantly, check your air. How much air do you have, and we do the whole group, and we're all looking, and usually Robert is the one leading the dive since he's the one that's got the most experience. We always throw him in the front, So, but
just don't throw me under the bus.
Yeah, we won't throw you under the bus. But when we're diving with other people, Robert is very cautious diver.
Yep.
And I'll give him that. And we're always checking. And the minute he sees whoever's got the lowest amount of air, he judges it. Okay, that's enough. We're gonna turn around. Let's go back. And some people say, "Well, I still got air left." Well, that's good for you.
Yeah, that's right.
That's good for you. You did a great job maintaining your breathing. That's outstanding.
Yeah.
But the dive is over.
That's right. That's right.
Everybody out of the water.
Yep. Come up with no less than 500.
No foul, no shame.
That's right.
Trust me, if I could have 200 psi, 2,000 psi, and if the person that we're diving with is down to, just bubbles of air in their tank, that's it. It's done. Yeah. I will not lose any sleep, and I will not be upset.
Right.
That is it. If the person says, no, you guys, if you still got air, you want to go ahead. I'm going to stay here on the shore. No foul, no hurt, no nothing.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll take it upon ourselves. Oh, okay, well, then we still got a little bit. Let's go exploring a little.
Yeah, do a shallow follow-up or something.
Yeah, just do another dive. Yeah. But we will. I'll get out of the water. I mean, I got no beef about that.
Well, hopefully those who are watching or catching us later on YouTube or Vimeo, maybe you learned a few things. If you're a diver, maybe this helped spur your awareness to pay closer attention to prepping properly for a dive, and as well as making sure you keep safe during the whole dive. Pay attention to your air, to your situation, to your buddy's air and situation, so that both of you come up safe. And then, by all means, we invite your comments or questions. You can always join us at ustream.tv on Saturday nights, 8 o'clock, or catch us on YouTube or Vimeo, or certainly hit us up on Facebook, Del Rio Dive Club, as well as our website, delriodiveclub.com. Before we head out, let's just reiterate the tips, training, and tech. Our next dive club meeting is September 20th at Rudy's Restaurant. Great food there. Rudy's. I'm sure that we'll all get to see Scuba Bob bring his famous sweet baby rays.
I'll take it in my pocket.
I was surprised to open our refrigerator. We have a bottle of the sweet baby rays.
I'm telling you, that stuff's the best.
Okay, so we also have Trash Fest 2012 coming up 6 October in New Braunfels, Texas. And then also after that, DEMA show, the Dive Equipment Manufacturers Association, for 2012 is on 14 through 17 November in Las Vegas. And all good things to check out and attend. Certainly our dive club meetings, if for nothing else, just to kind of shoot the breeze and have some good food with some good people.
Before we end, I just want to say something real quick.
Sure.
We talked about some serious things today.
Yep.
Please don't let that discourage you from even trying this activity.
Right.
It is a lot of fun if you remain safe. Obviously, we gave you examples of things that can happen if you're unsafe.
Right.
And some can end in catastrophic failure and death and all kinds of stuff.
But all are avoidable.
They're avoidable if you diagnose the situation and can address it quick. But it all goes back to the same thing. If you're unsure, don't do it. Just don't dive, period.
That's right.
I'm really fortunate that my dive buddy usually is Robert, but I'll dive with anybody. Although, I'm not going to change my name to Dog. But I'm very confident in my skills, and I know Robert's skills, and I'll dive anywhere with this gentleman that's sitting next to me. It's kind of funny. We have this click.
Yeah.
We just know, and it's if you guys ever feel like you want to dive with somebody and are scared or anything, please call us.
Yeah.
I'll dive with anybody, anywhere. Of course, we'll take it slow, and if you haven't done something, I'm not gonna push you to do anything,
right?
Because we're not gonna do it. But if you need a dive buddy, please call one of us.
Yep. We're always looking to dive.
Yes.
So let's see. I think that pretty much hit everything that I had. Unless we didn't have a commercial this week. It was your turn.
It was my turn, but we showed a video,
week,
so next week I got you.
Next week you got it. All right. So, that ends our podcast for this week. We hope you will join us in future episodes. Hard to believe this is 31. We got 31 under our
31.
belt.
I remember the first one still.
Yeah. I find myself going back to, because I archive all those, go back and look at the morphing that our podcast has gone through, a number of changes, and still more to come as we perfect it and upgrade software and hardware and things like that. We're just learning more as we go, but this is just a lot of fun for us, and hopefully a lot of fun for you guys out there. So until next week, that's all we have from ScubaDog
and Scuba Bob,
and we are
two guys who dive.